نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصافات صفا فالزاجرات زجرا فالتاليات ذكرا إن إلهكم لواحد رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما ورب المشارق إنا زينا السماء الدنيا بزينة الكواكب وحفظا من كل شيطان مارد لا يسمعون إلى الملأ الأعلى ويقذفون من كل جانب دهورا ولهم عذاب واصب إلا من خطف الخطفة فأتبعه شهاب ثاقب. Respectful honorable friends, last week's tafsir we had completed the tafsir of Surah Yasin. The next surah is Surah Saafaat. And the surah gets its name from the opening words of the surah, وَالصَّافَاتِ صَفًّا. In this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues mentioning the mission of the Anbiya alayhi salatu salam. Allah ta'ala mentions Tawheed and the proof of Tawheed. But along with it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rejects in here, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of one of the false beliefs of the mushrikeen. The mushrikeen, just the way the Yahud believed that Sayyidina Uzair was the son of Allah ta'ala, the Christians believed that Sayyidina Isa was the son of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The mushrikeen, they believed that the angels were the daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Na'uzubillah. So, in order to eradicate this false aqeedah and false belief of theirs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the opening words or the opening verses of the surah, and Allah ta'ala continues with this later on in the surah as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rejects this notion of theirs. Allah ta'ala begins the surah by taking an oath. And Allah ta'ala says, وَالصَّافَّاتِ صَفًّا فَالزَّاجِرَاتِ زَجْرًا فَالتَّالِيَاتِ ذِكْرًا. Allah Ta'ala takes an oath by the Saafaat, by the oath of those who stand in rows. Saafaat is from Saf, Saf which means the rows you hear straight in the Saf, the rows. فَالزَّاجِرَاتِ زَجْرًا, and by those who sternly drive, or those who are stern. فَالتَّالِيَاتِ ذِكْرًا, and by those who recite the dhikr, meaning the reminder. إِنَّ إِلَهَكُمْ لَوَاحِدٌ, indeed your Ilah, your Rabb, is one. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by mentioning in the opening 3 verses some qualities. And these qualities are, one is Saafaat Saffa, those who stand in rows. First of all, here was Saafaat. Allah Ta'ala takes a qasam. And as we've done previously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah Ta'ala wants to emphasize on something, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath on it. Allah Ta'ala doesn't need to take an oath, because after all, when Allah Ta'ala says something, an oath is taken to emphasize something. And we can understand that when we are emphasizing something, in order to convince somebody, we will take an oath. Allah Ta'ala doesn't need to convince us, Allah Ta'ala doesn't need to be taken any oath. But Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, out of His shafqa, out of His compassion for the ummah, for His creation, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala brings and takes an oath so that we are able to comprehend the importance of what Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is mentioning. Otherwise, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is not in need of taking any oath. Throughout the Quran, Allah Ta'ala has taken oath on His Zat itself, on His being, on His own qualities. Allah Ta'ala has taken an oath on the qualities of others as here. Allah Ta'ala has taken an oath on certain creation of His. Different things Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has taken an oath on. And the reason for this is because Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is not compelled the way we are. We are compelled that we can only take an oath on the name of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Taking a qasam on anything else besides the name of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is impermissible. So we are compelled that we should take an oath only on the name of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. But there is no compulsion upon Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala can take an oath on whatever He wants. More than that, the hikmat and what things Allah Ta'ala has taken oath and the ahkam, and that various scholars have written even treatises and books upon this itself. Now here Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala mentions the Saafaat Saffa, Zajirati Zajra, and Taliyati Dhikra. Allah Ta'ala takes an oath on those who Saafaat Saffa, those who stand in rows. Who is meant by those who stand in rows? There is certain different opinions amongst the Mufassirin. One opinion given here is that it refers towards, these qualities refer towards the Mujahideen. That when they stand in their rows, they stand firmly in their rows. And for Zajirat is Zajra, they stand firmly against opposition. And at the same time, for Taliyat Zikra, they remain in the remembrance of Allah Ta'ala as well. One tafsir is that it refers towards the Muslims who perform the salat. They also stand, the men stand in their stuff. They stand firmly against shaitan and they're doing the remembrance of Allah Ta'ala. But the unanimous or the most acceptable opinion amongst the Mufassirin is that here Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is describing the angels. These qualities refer to the qualities of the angels, and Allah Ta'ala mentions these, going back to what I mentioned in the beginning, to eradicate the beliefs of the mushrikeen with regards to the angels. That the angels are not the daughters of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, but they are the creation of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. That's the way insan, jinn, and the Anbiya alayhi salatu salam, just the way all of these are what? They are the creation of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and they do what? The ibadat of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. The angels are also the creation of Allah Ta'ala, and they are also appointed to do the worship of Allah Ta'ala. They are not equal to Allah Ta'ala, and neither are they the daughters of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. The qualities that Allah Ta'ala mentions is وَالصَّافَّاتِ صَفًّا. So an oath by those who stand in rows. And this is how Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala describes the angels. Hence the Mufassirin of that opinion. Safat Saffa, one opinion is that they stand in rows when they carry out the ibadat of Allah Ta'ala, when doing the dhikr and remembrance of Allah Ta'ala. And there are those opinions that they are all the times waiting in rows for what the instructions of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So they do not just gather, whenever they gather, whether carrying out the ibadat of Allah Ta'ala or any other instruction of Allah Ta'ala, they're not just here and there scattered about, or they just gather together and they huddle up together. But when they do stand, they stand in straight rows in the heavens, carrying out the obedience of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So this is one of the qualities of a Safat Saffa. Hence Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala sallam in the riwayat mentions, فُذِلَّ عَلَى النَّاسِ بِثَلَاثٍ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us virtues over others in three things. And that is our saf, number one. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions that our saf is like the saf of the angels. Mean that when we perform our salat as well, our saf is like the saf of the angels. And then just diverted from this hadith, another hadith. Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala sallam mentions to the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala, أَلَا تَصُفُونَ كَصَفِ الْمَلَائِكَ إِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ, that are you not going to, and why do you not make your rows like the manner in which the angels make their rows in front of their Rabb? The Sahaba asked Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that how do the angels make the rows? To which Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions that they complete the saf in front, and then وَتَرَاصَوْنَ, and then after they congregate together. Meaning that two things they do. And that is, they complete the row in front, and they also, in other words, fill in the gaps, you can say. They fill the gaps. So they stand in a row together. In this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this lesson as well. That when something is done, it should be done in an organized manner. It shouldn't be done unorganized, in an uncivil manner. And here this hadith where Nabi Sallallahu mentions that from those things that Allah Ta'ala has graced us upon is one is that our saf. So when we come into the masjid, you will see the Yahud, when the Yahud are in their places of worship, they'll be scattered in there wherever they want to be. Although they'll be one direction, but they won't be together. The Christians, they'll be also in rows, but they will be in rows in such a manner that wherever you get a space, wherever you want to, you'll be on the bench. So there'll be space empty somewhere here, there'll be gaps in between and that. But believers, when we come into the masjid, we do not take our own spot and just stand somebody here, there, and scattered about like we had during the COVID time. But we stand how? We stand shoulder to shoulder and we stand in one row. So this is something similar. So our saf is similar to that of the angels. So this is how the angels stand as well. And the second Nabi Kareem mentioned is that Allah Ta'ala has mentioned, made the earth masjid for us. And the turab, the soil, tuhur, a means of purity as well. إِذَا لَمْ يَجِدِ الْمَاء, when water is not found. That when water is not found, you do what? You do tayammum. So Allah Ta'ala has by default made the soil pure. And by default as well, Allah Ta'ala has made the whole land as a masjid, meaning that compared to the people, the Yahud for instance, they would have to be in a synagogue in their place of worship in order to perform salah, in order to worship Allah Ta'ala. For us that isn't the case, that if you're traveling, you have to find a masjid and you have to get to a masjid to read your salah. You can be anywhere. You can be anywhere, you can be either without a musalla as well, a prayer mat. And as long as you're convinced that look, the earth is pure, there's no impurity that you can see there, you can just perform salat as it is on the ground. And if you don't have water, you just use the same soil. You don't need to know or get any tests done that whether there's any impurity and send it to the labs and that to find out whether the soil is pure or not. If there is no sign of impurity, you utilize it and you can make the tayammum from it. This is the ease that Allah Ta'ala has granted this ummah and made it easy for us. Which shows us that there is and there should not be any excuse for a person not to be able to perform salah. If there is no water, then there's no excuse. Well, there's no water, now what do I do? Chalo, chutti now, day off. There's no water, so I can skip my salat now. Use soil and do tayammum. Or a person says that, look, I'm traveling, there's no masjid nearby. I'm not in a house, so where can I perform salah? Again, there is no excuse at all for a person. Hence, the Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala sallam would emphasize as well in the saf, and this is why he said to the Sahaba, why do you not? And elsewhere Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions, لَتَسَوُّنَّ صُفُوفَكُمْ أَوْ لُيَخَالِفَنَّ اللَّهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would stress and tell the Sahaba that straighten the rows. And if you do not straighten your rows, then Allah Ta'ala will divide your hearts. That if you're going to divide yourselves and you're going to be scattered in yourselves, then Allah Ta'ala will scatter your hearts as well. Allah Ta'ala will divide your hearts. And the Sahaba mentioned that Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala sallam would hold them by the shoulders and straighten them in the rows. The emphasis on this is established from the numerous ahadith that are found with regards to the straightening of the stuff. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala, he would go and he would walk through the stuff. And salat would not begin until the rows would not be straightened. Our situation is a little different because we already have sort of markers and we already have musallas that indicate where a person should be standing on. If, however, there wasn't any mats and there were no, even as if we were to have carpet only, but nothing to indicate where the rows are, then it would take a lot longer for people to straighten the rows. So there the Imam would have to walk or the Imam would have to wait and people would have to spend a bit of time in straightening the rows. Now it's very easy, simple for us. But unfortunately, even then, we do not straighten our rows. And this practice of the Sunnah, of the Imam telling the people to at least straighten the rows or fill in the gaps, this is also hardly found as well. That although we do have lines, but you do need to remind people that look, you need to stand on those lines as well. And if people do stand on the lines, the other problem we have is that people tend to leave gaps in between. They don't stand shoulder to shoulder. So one is, you have that extreme where we leave gaps in between. That is one which is wrong. And especially where we have the printed musallas as we have, where it's the individual. But the individual doesn't mean that this is an individual musalla. So some people will stand as if this is my individual musalla, and next one stands next to that on the next one individually, then there's going to be a gap. So it's not a case of that. This is the way the print is after all. But they're not individual musallas for individual. You stand according to each person's own width. That is how you're going to, how the musalla is going to become. So one must, as Nabi Karim mentioned, where there is gap, then that is filled by who? By shaitan. So a person should fill the gaps. So one is the extreme that we have where we do not fill in the gaps. We want to be so comfortable that we leave the gap, or we are so pals with shaitan that we still want shaitan to be standing next to us in salah. And the other extreme is those who wreck your entire salat by doing what? By touching your toes. By those who have fungi toes and they want to insist on touching your and spread the fungi to you as well. So then you have those as well, who themselves are standing bain al-mashriq wal-maghrib, east and west, isn't it? And they squashing you then. So that is also another extreme that the people go to. And the other extreme is that there is only space for half a person, but a double person wants to fit into that space. So that's another extreme. And then what happens is that everybody is in such tight barriers. It's not a case of you in such a crowd also wherein it's overcrowded. Normal circumstances insist that no, they want to be in that front stuff, but you want to be in the front stuff. When you should come early to be in the front stuff, you've come late and you still insist to barge into the front stuff where there isn't any space, then that is another extreme. So there shouldn't be a space, the gaps and the rows should be straightened as well. And in the hadith when Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to the Sahaba Kiram radiallahu ta'ala to stand in a manner that shoulder to shoulder and ankle to ankle, feet to feet, and some divide neck to neck as well. This is to give an example to make people understand that it means what? Simple, isn't it? And any child will understand that it means what? It doesn't mean that physically stand neck to neck now. How is a person going to do that? It means what? It means that look, stand in a straight line. That is what it means when you say shoulder to shoulder. Otherwise, nobody's shoulders are going to be the same. People's height is different, isn't it? So you have a 6 foot and you have somebody who's 5 foot. How is he going to stand shoulder to shoulder? Even if he's on his toes, he's not going to be able to be shoulder to shoulder. So why not insist on that as well? That, let the shoulders meet with one another as well. It means what? The shoulders should be in a straight line. So if you stand in a straight line, your shoulders are going to all be in a straight line. Feet as well, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has mentioned. Ankle as well, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned. Neck as well, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned. So this is mean what we state in the rules. It doesn't mean that the feet should be touching one another. And where the Sahabi did say that our feet would touch means that they would be parallel in such a manner that they would be able to touch one another, meaning in a straight line. Otherwise you try and combine all of these hadiths, then you won't be able to. And one of the years I told the students in Bukhari to try it out as well. And is it possible? Join the feet together as well, the ankles together, the knees together, the shoulder together, the neck together as well. It would be a total piece of art. So it doesn't work that way, it doesn't mean that way at all. So there are those who stand and insist on that. So doesn't mean that as well. And a lot of times in order to do that, to touch the small toe, the next small toe, a lot of times they even stand in a manner which is again in contrary to the sunnah as well, by tilting the feet are then again in the wrong direction. So this is incorrect as well. And if you have one of these channel tunnel guys, then try and bring your legs a bit in and see how far they're going to go, isn't it? And if you don't do karate in that, they won't be able to do the splits, isn't it? So, and then what happens? The whole surface messed up then, because they take that amount of space, and then they can't go down into ruku and sajda in that way as well, isn't it? Then they're going to come back in. So when they're going to come back in, then they leave in the space anyway. So what space have they filled? Why they insist, no, why leave the gaps, fill in the gaps, stand in such a manner? But when you're standing so wide apart, you can't read the whole salah. So when you're going to sajda, you're not going to be so wide apart either. You're automatically going to be leaving space in between in the other postures. So this would happen is you can get it totally messed up and wrong. If you misunderstand and misinterpret the hadith of Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. So this is something which is unique with this ummah, that when we stand in our salah, our standing in our salah is like that of the angels. So we are standing like the angels here on the earth, and the angels are standing in their safs in the heavens, and we are standing here in saf on earth. It creates unity. As Nabi Kareem mentions that if you do not do so, then Allah Ta'ala will do what? Allah Ta'ala will divide your hearts. That if you want to be separate from the person next to you, then Allah Ta'ala will divide your hearts. So it creates unity as well. Different people of different language, different race. They're all Muslims, but they're standing shoulder to shoulder, they're standing together in one self. Rich and poor. So it creates unity as well. And there is a systemized manner. And Allah Ta'ala is showing that as well in your lives as well. Everything and anything you do should be systemized as well. Further Allah Ta'ala mentions, فَالزَّاجِرَاتِ زَجْرًا. And by those who sternly drive, meaning the angels who drive. And some have mentioned that it refers towards, not driving vehicles here, the clouds, because they are ordered to drive the clouds, mean the clouds to their destinations. Or in other words, it is referring to driving shaitan away from the heavens, as is coming in the following verses. فَالتَّالِيَاتِ ذِكْرًا. And by those who recite, the taliyat means to recite, dhikr means reminder. And dhikr, reminder, all nasihat is a dhikr. فَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ ذِكْرَةً فَالْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And here it refers towards the Qur'an. And some of us have mentioned it refers towards the previous scriptures as well. That there are those angels who all the time they're doing what? They're just reciting the Qur'an and they're reciting the various other scriptures. Or it refers towards those angels who are appointed to send down the wahi, because the wahi is also a dhikr. After mentioning these qualities of who the angels, Allah Ta'ala then says what? Inna ilahakum lawahid. Without doubt your ilah is one. So the angels, if they were the daughters of Allah Ta'ala, then they wouldn't be instructed to do the obedience of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. They should be now chilling out, isn't it? They should have the daughters of Allah Ta'ala. So why should they be doing ibadat of Allah Ta'ala? And if they're the daughters of Allah Ta'ala, then they would have some status of deity as well. But the fact that they are also doing the ibadat of Allah Ta'ala shows that they've been created by Allah Ta'ala to do His worship, and they are not the daughters of Allah Ta'ala. رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا وَرَبُّ الْمَشَارِقِ. And why is it not befitting for Allah Ta'ala to have any children? Because He, after all, is Rabbu Samawati wal Ard. He is the Rabb of the heavens and the earth. وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا, whatever is between the two. And He is also Rabbul Mashariqi. And He is the Rabb of the Mashriq, the east. And by Allah Ta'ala mentioned Mashariq in the plural form, meaning all the points wherein the sun rises, because the sun will rise from different points according to where a person is, refers to as the eastern horizon. So Allah Ta'ala is the creator of all of these. And Allah Ta'ala, because Allah Ta'ala is the creator of these, Allah Ta'ala has the power to do these things. And in that Allah Ta'ala has the note, Inna zayyanna as-samaa ad-dunya bi zinatin al-kawakib. And indeed Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has zayyanna means to adorn. Sama ad-dunya, the sky of this world, bi zinatin al-kawakib, with the adornment of the stars. Meaning that the stars have been described as being what? The adornment, decoration of the heavens created by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. That the stars, the purpose is, and yes they do. You go outside and you look at the stars, they are what? They're something which look appealing as well. It looks nice, you enjoy looking at a clear sky and you look at the stars. It is something that decorates the skies. So that is one of the purpose why Allah Ta'ala has created these. And how Allah Ta'ala has created is that there is no glue or any Prit stick or anything, or white tack, blue tack, or any other tack for that matter, attaching them to the heavens at all. But they existed, they are there in its place. So one of the purposes of the stars is that it is the Zayyana Sama. Allah Ta'ala has adorned the adornment, decoration for the heavens. The others Allah Ta'ala has mentioned, it is there to guide a person as well. You navigate by means of the stars. And another purpose of the stars, which Allah Ta'ala mentions here, which we have covered previously as well, is that they are وَحِفْظًا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْطَانٍ مَارِدٍ, and as a protection from every rebellious shaitan, who لَا يَسَمَّعُونَ إِلَى الْمَلِي الْأَعْلَى وَيُقْذَفُونَ مِنْ كُلِّ جَانِبٍ. So that they, meaning the shayateen, cannot listen secretly, لَا يَسَمَّعُونَ, to eavesdrop, إِلَى الْمَلَئِ الْأَعْلَى, on the angels of the upper heights. وَيُقْذَفُونَ, and they are pelted مِنْ كُلِّ جَانِبٍ, from every direction. دُهُورًا وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ وَاصِبٌ, repelled, and they shall have an eternal punishment. إِلَّا مَنْ خَطِفَ الْخَطْفَةَ, except for the one who snatches something, and فَأَتْبَعُهُ شِهَابٌ ثَاقِبٌ, and is pursued by a flaming spark of the star. This refers to the meteoroids or the flying stars, which have a purpose as well. Before Wahi was revealed to Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, the shayateen had a position, or a spot you can say, in the heavens. And they would sit there, and they would do what? They would sit there, and they would hear the discourses, and they would hear the discussions amongst the angels. So accordingly, they had access to what's going on in the heavens and what's been the taqdeer of people, what's been decided in the heavens. And then they would do what? They would come and they would pass that on to others on the earth. So they had access to that. Then eventually a time came wherein Shaitan's access to the heavens had been closed. Shaitan and the jinn, they would go up to the heavens and they would find all of a sudden now that each time they go there, then there is flames attacking them and they would be burnt. So access to the heavens had been closed. They came and they complained to Iblis that this was happening all of a sudden. Access not granted anymore. Access is not granted anymore. So he said, look, go around, find out what's happening. Something is happening, some changes. Where is jinn? Went he and there finding out what's happening, why this, is there any other route or how we can bypass this. And that's when they found that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was performing the Fajr Salah in Maqam al-Nakhla. And why is Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was performing this Fajr Salah there? This is when they had heard the Qur'an. And when they heard the Qur'an, then they came to Iblis and said, it is because of this that access has been denied to the heavens. Why? Because Allah Ta'ala wanted to keep it a no-fly zone. So when Sayyidina Jibreel comes, with the wahi, comes in a manner that is pure, not attacked at all by any shaitan, and no shayateen can even get portion of the wahi before it reaches Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala sallam, or get a portion of it and mention it to somebody else, and he'll say, I'm a Nabi, look, I'm mentioning the same. So to keep that root safe from any such things, from it being contaminated, and for any other form of mischief in between that root, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prevented this access of these jinn. Elsewhere in a riwayat it is mentioned that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a decision in the heavens, then the angels, they start flapping, because Allah ta'ala is now directly, Allah ta'ala is conversing with them, or Allah ta'ala is in dialogue with them, instructing them whatever form it will be in. So out of that anxiety and awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angels start flapping their wings. And the sound of it is the way a chain is dragged on a stone. The dragging of a chain on a stone, it sounds in that manner, rattling of it. And then when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has completed the revelation or whatever matter, then they calm down. And when they calm down, they ask one another that what has your Rabb decreed now? That what has your Rabb then declared? So that's when they discuss and they mention that Allah Ta'ala has destined this, Allah Ta'ala has declared this, Allah Ta'ala has declared that for that person, or declared that for that person. So that's when these jinn, the shayateen, they try and get to the heavens, and they try to do what? Try and eavesdrop and hear what's this conversation happening there. And if they do get to hear something, what they then do is they then pass that on to the next one below who is waiting, like Chinese whisper. And then to the next one, to the next one. And Nabi Sallam described it in this manner, that they are waiting in rows. So the top one relates next one to the next one to the next one, until the bottom one he comes. And then he comes and he whispers that in the ears of his mate here, his friend on earth, meaning who? The soothsayers, the fortune tellers. With the fortune tellers. Nabi Kareem Sallallahu says that when they are there in the heavens, that's when they Shihabun Saqib. Either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands that these stars are thrown at them as flames and they are burnt, so they do not have access. Or if Allah ta'ala wants to, then they might just avoid it. They might be able to avoid it. And they hear something from the heavens, and they come and bring that news down to the soothsayer. And Nabi Kareem says that they bring one news, and the soothsayer then joins and mixes another 99 with it, and he makes up 100 things. So the person who listens to it, when they say that we do not believe what you're saying, he said, look, did I not tell you this one thing and it did come true? And he said, yes, of course, that one thing did come true. So if one thing comes true, then we believe everything, then isn't it? So this is how, we're not talking about those chancing fortune tellers. They are those who are professional soothsayers, you will say, who study the stars and they study these things, and they have connection with these jinns. And they collect and they get the information from this jinn. But in that, as I mentioned to you, they just get a grasp, or they just get a couple of words, a couple of things. That's all they have. So now this fortune teller is the one who has to now con the person here by making things up and saying things in such a manner, or trying to to engage from sort of the person's and feelings or the person's what side of mood they're in, how they are and what their issues may be. So get an indication from that, get a bit of indication from here, mix it all up and then present that to the individual. And then what happens is that from all the various things, if one just comes out to be correct, then this person is what? They're swayed over by this fortune teller, soothsayer. And then it's a case of whatever happens by phone Pirsa. Whatever, contact Pirsa. Get an idea from Pirsa. Should we go for holiday or not? Should we go for Hajj or not? Should we do this or not? Should we do this or not? Should we go for this business or not? Will this work out or not? Will we pass this exam or not? Will this happen or not? And this is exactly what happens. For everything, we just want to run to them. We want to run to them. Why? Because maybe throughout one thing came true. But it came true because the jinns are the ones who have gained this access to this information. And because of that, people are so gullible, that they start losing their iman due to these type of people, the manner in which they start believing in them, and the amount of shirk that they do with them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, in these verses, is referring towards this, that one of the purpose of the stars is that they are وَحِفْزًا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْطَانٍ مَارِدٍ, as a protection from every rebellious shaitan, so that they do not la yasamma'una. But Allah Ta'ala, where Allah Ta'ala wants, Allah Ta'ala allows them to evade those flaming stars, and they get away with maybe one or two news in this way. إِلَى الْمَلَئِ الْأَعْلَى. So la yasamma'una إِلَى الْمَلَئِ الْأَعْلَى. مَلَئِ الْأَعْلَى, the angels of the upper heights of the heavens. So when matters are discussed with regards to the future, they, the shayateen, cannot eavesdrop on those of the upper heights. And then what do? وَيُقْذَفُونَ, and they are pelted مِنْ كُلِّ جَانِبٍ, from every direction. So when you all of a sudden you just see one of these stars in that, then they said that's a shaitan been burnt there. And it's not necessary that you're going to keep on seeing it happening. You know, it is there, it exists and it happens. دُهُورًا وَلْهُمْ عَذَابٌ وَاصِبٌ. Duhur meaning they are repelled by these stars. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ وَاصِبٌ. I mean that's here in this world, and inshallah they shall have an eternal punishment in the hereafter anyway. إِلَّا مَنْ خَطِفَ الْخَطْفَةَ. So Allah Ta'ala says, except for the one who does then snatch. خَطِفَ الْخَطْفَةَ, the one who snatches something. Meaning he manages to overhear something. And then what happens is فَتْبَهُ شِهَابٌ ثَاقِبٌ. But then what happens is long before a flaming spark pursues him as well and destroys him. But because of that mentioned to you, he's heard something, and before that flame sparks him, he's already passed it on to the next one, and the next one passes it on. So in this way, they manage to quickly pass it on to one after the other. So in this way, that's how it reaches, and those Chinese whispers then reaches and it comes down to the soothsayer. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this is mentioning as well that one of the work of the angels is that they are the ones who are in the upper heights, and they are what? They are the creation of Allah Ta'ala, just the way Allah has created them, just the way He's created the heavens and the earth and whatever's in between, and how Allah Ta'ala has created the stars. And further later on as well, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala mentions again, and this false aqidah of the mushrikeen will be touched upon as well. Allah Ta'ala grants all understanding. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَتُبْ عَلَيْنَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.